Hey there, how's it going? I'm Edwin, and welcome to your fourth Pebble development tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about all sorts of services, such as Bluetooth, battery, and accelerometer tap. So services on Pebble are they're pretty easy. Basically, you subscribe to a service with that service's handler, and every time the service is updated, such as the Bluetooth connection has changed, the Pebble SDK will call your handler, and whatever you want to do inside that handler, you can do. So we're going to start with the Bluetooth service. So the Bluetooth service is probably the most simple one. It just passes a Boolean into your handler, so whether or not the connection is on or off, so true or false. And so here are a few functions for you to set up the Bluetooth service. So there's Bluetooth connection service subscribe. You put in your handler, and then there's Bluetooth connection service unsubscribe to stop getting handler updates. And then if you don't want to use handlers, you can also use Bluetooth connection service peak, which returns a Boolean of the current Bluetooth connection status. So here's some example code. So as you can see, it's just a few lines to get it up and running. You have, so, all right, right here, I just wanted to demonstrate the connection service peak function. We have connection connected before subscription bool. I just called it that. We're grabbing it from the peak. We're passing it into our Bluetooth handler, so it's doing that. It's running this before we even subscribe. So you can use this as a method of gathering your information on Bluetooth, because Pebble actually takes about 10 seconds for it to call your handler, since I think firmware 2.6 or 2.7, they implemented it where it's about a 10-second wait until it calls your handler. So what I've done in a couple of my apps that need the update instantly, I just make it so it has an app timer running every second, and it calls this every second instead of having a service, which isn't the most battery efficient by any means, but it gets the job done. Here we have a Bluetooth connection service subscribe. You can see I'm just passing in my Bluetooth handler. So the type def for the handler is very simple. It's a void function, doesn't return anything. You can call it whatever you want. And then your only parameter is a bool called connected for myself, but you can change it to whatever you would like. And lastly here in DNet, or wherever you want to unsubscribe, we have a Bluetooth connection service unsubscribe. Oh, that should say unsubscribe. I I missed out on the un part there. Sorry about that. But the unsubscribe function doesn't have any parameters. You just call it, and it does everything for you. So if you're not familiar with Booleans, we'll just go over this quick. If it's connected, then it will do a double pulse. Otherwise, it will do a long pulse. Very simple. It's true or false. All right, so next for the battery service. So the battery service provides info on the watch's battery. It provides the battery's charge, if it's charging or if it's plugged in. So you might be asking, what's the difference if it's charging or if it's plugged in? Well, the Pebble can have a cord plugged into it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's charging if there's no power running to it. So that can be helpful in some cases if you want really specific data on your on whether or not your watch is charging, if it's getting any power. The battery charge runs in intervals of 10. So that means you'll never see a battery percent like 17 or 18. This is because the Pebble's battery is so small, it's really difficult to read specific charge. So you'll get 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, etc., all the way up to 100. Here are a few functions for your battery state service. So battery state service subscribe, you pass in your handler, and simply subscribes you. Your handler, we'll go over that in a second. The battery state service unsubscribe, just like Bluetooth service unsubscribe, you put no parameters in, and it just unsubscribes you from the service. And of course we have our peak function here, which returns battery charge state struct, and so you just call this anytime you want to grab the info without having to wait for your handler to be updated. So here is some example code for the battery. So I've set this up very similar to the Bluetooth example code. here in the beginning, we have our window being created and everything, and here, battery charge state is the main struct you'll be using. It's the only struct you'll be using, I guess, to handle battery information. It's not a pointer, it's just a struct, so you'd set it up like this, and battery state service peak returns a battery charge state struct, and so we're setting that into the return value. And here we have our battery handler. We're shooting in our current state into this. So as you can see, our battery handler type def, our only parameter for this handler is a battery charge state called whatever you want, as long as it's a valid variable name. And then down here we have our subscription, so battery state service subscribe, pass in our handler. And so then anytime the battery is updated, it generally checks. I don't know how often it is. It might be around 30 seconds. It's not like the Bluetooth where or the accelerometer tap where it's only called when it's updated. The battery handler, I believe, is refreshed quite often. So if you're drawing primitives in text every single time this is called, that's probably not the most battery efficient use on your Pebble. So here I have some example code on how to use a battery handler. So if you want to grab the charge level, you just go whatever your variable name is, .charge %. It has to be spelled just like that. Boolean, so that's an integer, 0 to 100, but you're going to get intervals of 10. Your Boolean, whether or not it's charging, so true or false, state.isCharging, pardon my voice crack. Bool plugged, state.isPlugged, so is it plugged into the watch or not? If it's charging, this will obviously be true. And then we just have an app log here for demonstration purposes that shoots out our battery level. If you're wondering about this %, basically in SN/printf or any sort of formatting, you need 2% signs if you want to show %. That's because the % sign goes before any sort of representation here. And then we're printing out whether or not it's charging and whether or not it's plugged. And then lastly, we have our battery state service unsubscribe, and we don't have to pass in anything again, and it unsubscribes us from the service. Alright, so lastly for our simple services definitions, there's the accelerometer tap service. Here, this is a really handy function if you just want to set up a handler that detects shakes for you. You don't have to set up any sort of algorithm. You just register this, and it even provides you the direction and axis. So it detects a shake, even though it's called a tap service. I find that it's more of a like a wrist shake, like a good shake, instead of just tapping the watch itself. But sometimes that works if you tap it hard enough. So it's called anytime there is a shake, but there is a little bit of like a wait interval between shakes, so you can't keep shaking repeatedly and it keeps calling the handler. You have to wait a little bit. It's like a 2-second delay probably. So here's a simple tap example. So here we are. We have our service being subscribed, tap handler. Here's our type def. We'll go over that in a second. And we also have our unsubscribe function. So no parameters in here. Very simple, just like the other services. So here with our tap handler, I've actually grabbed this from the Pebble developer documentation. I just copy pasted it. See, it provides you with the axis and direction. You probably won't necessarily need this, but if you do, here's a little example. It's going through a switch, checking if it's axis X, Y, or Z, and then it checks the direction, whether or not it's greater than 0 or equal or less. And it just prints the X, Y, Z if it's positive or negative. So I can't see why you would need that particularly. I generally just use tap handler for calling functions, like I have an app of mine where it changes cards when you shake. You don't need the axis or the direction to do that, but it's there. And so there are your 3 sort of basic service functions. You got Bluetooth, battery, and accelerometer. Just a quick overview. If you want to subscribe to one, you'd go Bluetooth connection service subscribe, pass in your handler. It's a little different for each one, but you only pass in your handler for each service. Each service, except for the battery service, provides updates when they're changed. Well, the battery service does provide updates when they're changed, except the battery is a little different because it's called probably about every 30 seconds. I'm not exactly sure on that, so don't quote me, but I'm just taking a guess. And yeah, so now let's jump into some example code. So if you guys could pull up the hello world file we had there the other day, or the other tutorial if you're skipping to this one. Okay, so here we have our hello world program. If you recall what this does, it basically just shows the time and draws it draws sort of a cool line effect every time the tick handler is called. So we're gonna modify this a little so it's more useful. So we're gonna implement Bluetooth, battery, and tap services now. All right, so let's create a few text layers here. Let's create one called Bluetooth layer, or Bluetooth TL for text layer, but you can name it whatever you want. And I recommend you do that. And battery TL. And instead of, yeah, all right, that should be good. And we'll do something unique with the shake service. All right, so let's set up those text layers. We can just sort of copy the same code we've got here. But we want to change our areas. And let's actually align. Let's change our text layer name. If you're using Sublime Text or another sort of editor, you can simply use replace. Okay, let's change our text layer name to time layer, because this is displaying the time. Alright, now let's add in our battery layer. And because we are going to be wanting these in different areas, we're going to change the coordinates a little. Let's center these all too. So text layer set text, or set alignment. Is it set text alignment? Let me just check here. Yeah, okay. So let's use text layer set text alignment, pass in our Bluetooth text layer. Oh yeah, okay. So I've got my syntax right. I was just checking it there. Let's also bump up our font to Gothic 28 bold, just so we can see the time in a better view. Or that's this is a Bluetooth layer, so let's make this Gothic 20. Let's make this Gothic 18 bold. You can Google the fonts and or look them up on the developer documentation. You can change that up however you'd like. We're going to center the battery text layer as well. And we're going to change that to Gothic 18 bold. And then we are also going to center our time layer here. Ooh. Alright, and also, let's change our time layer to 28 bold, just so we can see that better. Let's unbold these, change them to 24. No, we'll just go 18, whatever. Sorry, I can't make up my mind today. Alright, now that we've got that set up, we need to change our coordinates because we don't want stuff colliding. So 28 bold, we're probably going to want to move the battery text layer down about 36 pixels, let's say. And then Bluetooth layer, maybe about 60, 66. How about that? Just a good amount of spacing. And then, alright, now we've got that set up. We're going to subscribe to our services. So let's subscribe to them right after we create the window, along with the tick timer service subscribe. So Bluetooth. And let's subscribe to our battery service. And we'll unsubscribe from them down here, just so you guys can get a feel for these functions. Although they do unsubscribe automatically after your app is closed, but you know, you should just get used to doing that. Alright, so now we have to make our handlers. So if you remember, the Bluetooth handler only passed in a bool, and then our battery handler passed in a battery charge state. Alright, so now we've got that set up. We also want to get our Excel service subscribed. I believe that's correct. Let's just go back here, check. Oh, 32T direction. And yep, that should be good. Alright, now we've got all of our services subscribed with all of our different handlers. We're just going to open up a terminal here and do the initial run. Oh, okay, we've got a few errors there. Jeez. Because, wow. Okay, if you use the replace function, it replaced text layer in the functions with with time layer, so we're just gonna fix that. Alright, that should be better. Okay, just one error. Excel tap service subscribe, and I have a misspelling in subscribe. Alright, now that we've got those errors ironed, okay. Oh, because that was my fault. I had an example code here while I was creating this tutorial. Alright, that's good. Alright, now we want to do something with these. So in our Bluetooth handler, let's make it so it sets our text layer accordingly to whether or not it's connected. So if connected, text layer set text, and we want to do our Bluetooth text layer, and we want to set it to connected. We're excited about that. Otherwise, we're going to set our disconnected. Little sad face. Our watch likes it when it's paired to the phone, so you know it's a sad day when it's disconnected. Alright, now for our battery handler, we probably want to put in just our battery state, and if it's charging, then we'll say it's charging. But otherwise, we won't put that in there. So let's grab our state in a local integer here. So int percent equals state.charge percent. And then let's create a char pointer up here as well. Or an array, I'm sorry, we're not making that mistake again. I'm going to set it equal to 100%, make sure we have enough formatting there, and charging. Just give it a little extra space. So we're going to print to our battery format here. The size of battery format. Then we're going to print %d. So if you're not familiar with smprintf or other formatting, you're going to want to get used to this. %d is for integers, and I think you can use booleans as well. And %% is for percent. So we're going to want to do our percent after. You put it in afterwards as a parameter, and if you don't have any percentages, I don't see why you'd be using smprintf if you don't have any parameters afterwards, but you just go like that. And then we also want, if it's charging, then we want to say and charging. So let's do a little bit here that puts in a string, and we'll create a char pointer array. This will actually work. If it's not charging, don't just put a little blank. Otherwise, put and charging. And again, this is messy code, but you know it gets the job done. And I'm just trying to teach you guys how to use this. You shouldn't worry about efficiency right now. You know, you should worry about it later on when you're building awesome apps. So battery pools, and we're gonna go state.is charging. All right, now we need to set our text layer to that. So text layer set text. I'm gonna pass in our battery TL. We're gonna pass in our battery format, and that should be good in theory. We're just gonna test that out here. All right, no errors. Now, if history repeats itself, we're gonna have some issues setting up our Wi-Fi here. Okay, so I sorted out my issues and everything, and I installed it successfully. And I realized that I forgot to include in the text layer tutorial, a very important part of text layers. Text layer set background color. So by default, when you initialize a text layer with text layer create, it sets the background color to white. So this basically will draw white on top of any layers that are below, which is a bad thing if you're, you know, in our case, because we want everything to be visible. So that's why if you installed it when I had cut off there, it was giving you errors or you wouldn't be able to see the layers below that layer. So basically how to use this function, really easy. Just text layer set text alignment, put in your text layer, put in your text alignment. So basically how it goes is G text alignment, and then you can do left, right, or center. So you can pause the video now. If you need to add that, you should add it in for all three of your layers so there's no issues there. So we're just gonna build this again for kicks, and we're gonna install it. And I always use the logs flag because if anything ever goes wrong, it's quick. And there we go. Oh, I commented out these because I was debugging. Sometimes it's the stupidest things in programming. All right. So now, if you install it, you'll notice quickly that the Bluetooth and battery layers don't say a thing. So you can see here, it's just a few X's for me because I put the X's there. But in real, it's because the Bluetooth and battery haven't been updated. So remember that they only refresh whenever they need to be. So if I disconnect my watch here and we wait a few seconds, we'll see the Bluetooth handler change because there's been a change in the system. So that's why you don't get it immediately, and that's why you also need to use Bluetooth or battery connection service peak at the start of your app to grab the status right there. So you can see disconnected. It's got a little sad face. All right. So now we've got our Bluetooth and battery subscribed. We want to add in the service peak. So let's just do that really quickly. So we're going to grab a bool connected, and it's going to be Bluetooth connection state service peak. And then we're going to send that off to our Bluetooth handler. And we're going to also do a battery charge state called state, or whatever you want to do. And it's going to be battery state service peak. Return a battery charge state, and then pass that into our battery handler. And now if you can pause the video if that was a little fast for you. And we install this again. Alright, so if you can't tell yet, I always have a tough time installing my watch apps. It takes forever. But anyway, if you tried to run this, it's not going to run because we had some uninitialized pointers. That's a bad habit of mine doing that. So you have make sure you have to put that at the bottom because all the elements have to be created or else it'll crash. So we're just going to build this again. Run Pebble install. Fuck. Jesus Christ. Okay. There we go. We've installed it successfully. And we're just going to see there. We've got our 90% connected. And now anytime it is updated, it will go instantly. So if you close the app and open it again, you got your services updating instantly. There we go. Just switch to disconnected. And you can see our awesome line there, floating around, having a good time. Okay, so now lastly, let's just implement our tap handler. So every time it's shaken, let's do a little app log that prints the direction. And it also does a double pulse, or a long pulse, just for effect. Simple enough. You can pause the video if it's too fast. Oh, what a shocker. I'm not dealing with this right now, so thanks for watching. This has been your fourth Pebble development tutorial on Bluetooth, battery, and Excel tap services. Hope to see you in the next one.